This is a disgrace for animals. This guy, who is supposed to be a vegan YouTuber, has been promoting this anti-vegan guy for months.
Tobias Leenaert believes that progress, not purity, is the best way to save more animals.
Veganism is a deontological stance against animal use. That's veganism. This who has made a lot of money, supposedly promoting veganism, is now going against veganism. This guy is a utilitarian, and he doesn't even know what utilitarianism means. What if vegans don't promote veganism but reducitarianism? Well, if vegans promote reducitarianism, they are utilitarians who try to reduce suffering by tackling consumption of animal products. That is not the goal of veganism, and that is not the purpose of the deontic stance against animal use. That is not the purpose. The purpose is to change the minds of people who still think that animals are resources. People like Tobias Leenaert, who says, well, if they prepare a meal for us and they take the effort to do it, then maybe we should eat it, because it's going to look bad if we don't eat it. So he still believes that some animals are resources for him, that the problem is only that they suffer, and that we only have to tackle consumption. Maybe in some years from now, they will get to this really high mountain. He says that veganism is like the top of the mountain, the Gipfel, the summit of the mountain. Veganism is the most basic sort of respect. It's as simple as, oh, I don't perceive other sentient individuals as resources or slaves for me. It's very simple, basic. It's a moral obligation. We are not asking anyone to become virtuous. We are asking of people to comply with a moral obligation, which is not to perceive and treat, and therefore treat other sentient individuals as if they were slaves for them, as if they were properties, merchandise, as if they were belongings.
Fierce debate. Many people agree with him that he's just pragmatic. Others say he's watering down the vegan movement. So, is Tobias...
Vegan movement? A vegan movement promotes veganism. He's distorting what veganism really means so that he can sell more books. That's what he's doing. And this genius is well, maybe Tobias is right. No, Tobias Leenaert, no, he's not right. He's a fucking idiot, and he's an opportunist, and he has made a lot of money. Well, both of them are opportunists. They make a lot of money by promoting something entirely different from veganism, but they hang on to the label. The label is the marketing for them. They treat everything as a strategy. Tobias Leenaert is supposedly the vegan strategist. He could be a strategist to sell books to non-vegans who feel very enabled by his bullshit ideology. It's protecting the egos of the exploiters, of people exploiting the victims. The victims are not people. They might feel bad if you tell them that they shouldn't exploit animals. They're going to feel bad.
A vegan realist or a vegan sellout? Take us back to your childhood.
No, he's not a vegan. He's not a vegan. Yeah, he is a sellout. He's not a vegan.
He's eating chicken.
For those who don't know, this guy lives or is from Belgium. So, yeah, in the countryside of Belgium or any other well-off European country, it's easy to find animals in high welfare conditions being exploited. It's very common. That's why this guy is defending welfareism. This guy is a welfarist. And, well,
also very concerned about.
And he thinks that everybody is like him. Like, oh, if they tell me that I'm exploiting animals, and I'm not going to change, because then they tell me that I'm exploiting animals. Do you see how this guy pretends not to be on board, or well, he's on the fence. He's like, oh, I don't know, maybe Tobias is right. He has been promoting Tobias Leenaert for months now, so he is on board with the idiocy that this guy spreads.
So enthralled by this topic, and I was so convinced, like, oh my god, this can have such an impact, and this is such
oh my god, cause. I could make so much money.
At that moment I decided, okay, this is what I spend the rest of my life on.
Your book, How to Create a Vegan World, A Pragmatic Approach, and it's in the title. It's promoting a pragmatic approach to vegan activism, animal rights advocacy, animal advocacy. What does pragmatic vegan advocacy actually mean in practice?
Yeah, so pragmatic
vegan is a fucking welfarist. That is it. Pragmatic vegan is just a utilitarian, a welfarist.
You're not going to do things according to a set of rules that tells you how to do something. So it's not a matter of orthodoxy or belief, of ideology, but
there are no rules. The only rule is how to reduce suffering. That's the only rule for utilitarians. If this reduces suffering, then everything should be permitted. I'm stealing to reduce suffering. I'm ending the life of other people or sentient individuals to reduce suffering. So there are no rules. What rules? It's a life without principles. A utilitarian is somebody without principles. There are no principles. The only principle is, how can I reduce suffering? How can I reduce suffering?
I distinguish in this book a couple of ways to be pragmatic. The first one is in our ask. I say
asking for basic decency is not pragmatic. It's dogmatic. Pragmatic is, talking about whatever but animals, because nobody is as ethical as me. They are not going to change. So he pretends to be this great ethical person that nobody can match. So since he's so ethical, nobody can match his ethics of not eating animals. He only talks about eating animals, which is another disgrace. Even the most acclaimed activists used to say, well, but most animals are in the food industry, so I'm just going to talk about food. Yeah, what has that achieved? Well, now everybody thinks that veganism is a fucking diet that they can choose to follow or not to follow, and that's it. Oh, veganism is not eating certain stuff. And that's how great the activism has been. Vegan activism, vegetarian activism has been. The forefathers of veganism never said, well, this is a diet. At least after just a few years of thinking about animal emancipation and how could we achieve animal emancipation, they said, well, this is not just about exploiting animals for food. And the great vegan activists are only talking about food. This other guy with the beard, he meat eaters. I think that meat eaters is the most common term in all his videos. All his fucking videos are about meat eater. Meat eater is the opposite of vegetarian, not the opposite of vegan. The opposite of vegan is an animal exploiter, because veganism is about rejecting the exploitation of other animals. Not just necrophagy, not just eating their bodies.
To go vegan, we can also ask them to go to reduce. That's one thing. The second thing is we don't always need to talk about
if you ask people just to reduce, then you're not a vegan. You don't believe in the principle that humans should live without exploiting animals. That is the whole principle. It's not about reducing the consumption of animal products in your diet. It's about stopping the exploitation of animals altogether, through the realization that other sentient individuals are not slaves or resources or vending machines. Vending machines so that people can have a fucking dream catcher on their walls. Or vending machines so that people say, well, but the hen didn't want the egg, and now I'm just taking the egg. No, the egg is not a resource for humans. That is the whole mindset that veganism wants to promote. This guy is just trying to make people believe that veganism is about reducing suffering, and therefore what he does has to do with veganism. And the other idiot, the other guy here, thinks the same. Reducing suffering. Reducing suffering is a utilitarian idea, which is very problematic. If you see a dead animal and you eat that animal, it doesn't cause suffering. It may not cause suffering. But you are perceiving that individual as a resource, and that is the whole problem. That is the root of the problem. The root of the problem is what veganism wants to tackle, not the symptoms. Welfarists love to focus on the symptoms, like this guy over there.
We can talk about whatever works in terms of motivations or arguments. It can be health, it can be environment, whatever works. The third isn't...
It could be whatever works. Yeah, really. What about all these I'm no longer vegan people on YouTube, for example? Just search on YouTube, I'm no longer vegan, and you will see how many of those never understood what veganism was about. And they say, well, I'm no longer vegan. No, you were never vegan. And the problem, what is the problem? The problem is that they, after just even years, if they don't understand that animals are not resources for them, they go back to use animals as resources. That is the whole fucking problem. If you don't understand that, then you're not a vegan, because you don't understand the vegan principle. Veganism is a principle. If you don't hold that principle, you're not a vegan. If you don't know what the principle is, you're not a vegan. And that's why they left them documents. You can read like 30 pages or 40 pages, well, whatever. It's a very simple read. You can read those documents in one day. The whole theoretical framework of veganism is there. And you can read that in just one day. Why should it be controversial? Because of your ignorance or your dishonest your willingness to be dishonest so that you can sell more books? Listen, if somebody says, well, look, people, we have a new movement, and the movement is about this. If Tobias comes up with Tobiasism, and he says that Tobiasism is a movement about protecting the egos of people, well, then I say, well, that movement sucks, and I'm not going to identify myself as a Tobiasist. I'm not going to identify myself as a Tobiasist. He would say, well, yeah, because you are not. Why does he think that he can claim to be a vegan if he doesn't agree with the principle of veganism? And he wants to redefine, he wants to take the label and make reducitarianism, which is his friend's Bateman. Reducitarianism is going to bridge the gap between vegans and non-vegans. Well, let's meet in the center, reducitarian. Veganism is not a diet. Veganism is not a set of practices. That Bateman dude that came up with a very well-founded dude from a fucking Ivy League university. He came up with this TED talk oh, I have a great idea. Let's meet people where they are. If we promote reducitarianism, then we are going to unite vegans with the non-vegans, and everybody is going to be happy with because of suffering reduction. That's utilitarianism is not veganism. And that's his friend, and he's co-opting even that idea, trying to redress it and trying to mask it as veganism. Now reducitarianism is veganism. Well, there you go. Problem solved. And animals will suffer less.
Okay. Do you say the last one you find to be the most controversial? The one I've seen most people find to be controversial is about reduction. And in the book, you do emphasize encouraging reduction as opposed to insisting on full veganism. You mention how it can be more effective.
Full veganism. Full veganism. This idiot has been talking about veganism for years. He doesn't know that veganism is not a set of practices. Veganism is not a set of practices. Full veganism. What are you talking about? Veganism is a principle. You either hold that principle or you don't. There is no full veganism and half veganism and 80% vegan. How can this guy make money out of the vegan movement without knowing the most basic stuff about veganism?
Change. If we tell people that just reducing is enough, are we basically saying that factory farming and animal suffering is acceptable in moderation? And if not?
Factory farming. As if England, 1944, was a country full of factory farms. We are talking about World War II and a bunch of people hiding in the tube underneath the surface, underneath the streets of the cities, so that they wouldn't be bombed by the German army. And these guys were able to promote veganism, not reducitarianism, during World War II. And this the people, they won't change.
What are we saying if we're saying that?
So I think that the concern for like what am I saying is kind of like an egocentric concern. Like you're concerned about like, is this the right thing? Am I doing the right thing here? But
an egocentric concern. Yeah. Are people going to hate me if I tell them that exploiting animals is wrong? No, they are not going to buy my books if I tell them that exploiting animals is good. It's not good.
what is the effect? That's the only thing I'm interested in. I'm not interested in like, am I following the rules? Am I saying some?
Yeah, the only thing he's interested in is getting invited to Luxembourg to talk about animal rights. Rights. What rights? What rights? The right to be exploited for cheese if your friends make dinner and they put some cheese and then you have to eat it because eating is going to be very frowned upon.
We know from research that more people seem to be following up on small asks than on bigger asks. That's not just true for diet change, but that's true in general. So if you ask a person like stop flying, then you might be less successful than if you tell them stop flying short distances, for instance. So that is one reason why you could.
If you tell a very abusive guy that he should just grope, not grape, maybe he's going to listen.
Use this message of reduction. I'm not saying you always have to use that message, but I think the principle that I have that trumps all the other principles.
These guys don't believe in social change and the rejection of certain behavior socially. They don't believe in the power of social change. When the victims are animals, they believe in reducing suffering because nobody is going to be as ethical as I am.
flexible in your approach and to adapt yourself and to see who you have in front of you and to understand that this person might require a different message and a different argument than this person.
Right.
And that is pragmatism. And I oppose that to
So,
idealism or dogmatism, where you think like, no, it always has to be about the animals, it always has to be about go vegan.
dogmatism. Asking people to stop exploiting animals is dogmatism. Purists, not pragmatic, not strategists like me.
Rules, that's an orthodoxy, that's something that we tell ourselves that's right, but that's not necessarily or not always effective. So flexibility over rigidity.
So it's less, you're less concerned about the kind of
Flexibility, claro, of course, claro, clear, of course. When he's not the victim, flexibility make him sell more books. Yeah.
external ideas of this.
Now, all these welfarists, reducitarians, and utilitarians, well, utilitarianism is the mindset behind welfarism and reducitarianism and all that bullshit, because it's like, this is going to get more numbers, right? So they think that it's about the numbers.
Concerned about the outcome of it. So, for example,
And they are going to say, well, you are the one that is not caring about the victims. Yeah, the victims are going to be trillions more if we don't stop that right now. No, you're not caring about the victims because you don't want people to reduce. We want people to stop perceiving animals as resources right now. If we don't stop right now that bullshit, the victims are going to be billions and billions more. That is the whole fucking point of a movement promoting the abolition of animal exploitation. Not the prohibition, the abolition, which means changing the mindset that humans have towards other animals. Prohibition doesn't change any mindset. It's illegal to steal. It's illegal to steal. And people do it when there is no police around. And that is not the goal of veganism. The goal of veganism is to change how people perceive other animals. Not that there has to be police around for people to stop exploiting animals, but that the norm would be that people don't perceive animals as resources anymore in some future. But if we don't do that, the result will be the perpetuation of a systematic oppression of thinking that animals are here for us to exploit.
The ideas that may come with telling people to reduce it might end up making people think, well, I guess animal farming is okay in moderation. You're okay with that as long as they actually reduce, because the outcome is less animals are going to be bred into existence and killed.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
So I do care about the outcome most of all. If the result would be that
Fewer animals are going to be. For how long? How many years? How many years are going to fewer animals with 8 billion people eating fewer animals? Animals are going to be exploited by the billions over and over in years and decades and decades and decades. But since these guys think that the rest of society will never be in the summit, in the summit of the mountain. When people believe that, when people are so self-righteous that they believe that they are so ethical that nobody can match their ethics, they are going to promote bullshit.
people think like, or people are going to eat less meat and think like that's okay. That's not ideal, but my theory of change is that if a lot of people do that, everything will change, because there will be more accepting of animal rights arguments, because they know there's nothing to sacrifice anymore. They know they have good food.
Yeah. If you tell people to exploit animals just a few days a week, then they're going to respect animals. Yeah, it has worked great. This reduction bullshit is just a vicious circle.
And the whole conversation around it will change, maybe policy will change, and then I'm not afraid that they will stop there. I'm more afraid that they will never start. I'm more afraid that if we ask them to go vegan in all circumstances and at every moment, etc., that many people will not.
They will never start because there is no pressure for them to do it. He is taking the pressure away. He's like, oh well, you can just exploit animals when you want. But eventually you're going to maybe stop. He's taking all the pressure away from people who need that, need to feel that pressure, and finally question what they are doing. But if you tell them, well, just reduce, then is it wrong or is it not wrong? And if the only thing that is wrong is to cause suffering, what's stopping a hunter? What's stopping somebody who says, well, I just eat backyard eggs because I see that those hens are happy, and all the Krishna guys saying, well, it's mercy milk or something like that. Well, we treat the cows, we treat them very well. It's mercy milk, and that's welfareism. Welfareism will never achieve animal emancipation. Welfareism will never get animals free from exploitation. And that's what vegans believe, and therefore vegans promote veganism as a moral obligation, as a moral baseline. If guys like this hinder that, that's anti-veganism, not veganism, anti-veganism. There are hindrances or for people to start perceiving veganism as a moral baseline, as something of basic decency. Veganism is basic decency. If they don't understand that, they are not vegan.
But by all means, if you think you have a person in front of you or you have an audience in front of you that's open to that message to go vegan for the animals, by all means use that. I'm just saying, don't.
Yeah, if the person is already convinced, tell them that what they are already convinced of is the right thing.
Assume that it's going to be the best and the only way in every circumstance.
Right.
And an important part of the theory of change in the book is that these motivations evolve, right? So somebody, in every talk I give, I ask.
The only motivation for people to go vegan is to understand that other individuals are not resources or slaves or vending machines for them. That is the only motivation to go vegan. If you want to promote vegetarianism to reduce suffering, that is not veganism. And you're not a fucking vegan.
Who here was originally or stepped originally into animal rights or into veganism for...
A vegan is somebody who believes that the principle of veganism is going to emancipate animals. If you don't believe that, don't call yourself vegan. Veganism is an animal emancipation movement based on the belief that at some point people are going to understand animals are sentient individuals, and sentient individuals are not to be perceived as things that they can use or slaves that they can put to work for them. That animals as sentient individuals are not here for humans to make use of them for their purposes. Yeah, if we tell thieves that they should stop stealing, the toothpaste from the supermarket, so we have to promote that they keep stealing, but not the toothpaste from the supermarket. And at some point, they will stop stealing altogether. They will accept them more, and they will be more accepting of the idea that stealing is wrong.
All rights messenger.
Right.
We have to consider always that like it's not just attitudes that leads to behavior change, but it can be behavior change first that leads to attitude change or belief change.
Right. Has there ever been a time where you haven't been pragmatic, where you've not been able to stick to it?
I usually can keep.
Yeah, because stealing is illegal, then people are going to believe that stealing is wrong, and nobody's going to steal anymore. Or is it that in societies where it is really frowned upon, people don't steal?
There was a confrontation not so long ago with hunters here in the area, and I saw a person coming up on the meadow, and he had a gun, and I asked him like, "Did you hunt?" And he said like, "Yeah, I was hunting." And I said like, "You backward dickhead" or something, and he said like, "Oh yeah, you probably won't eat meat, right?" And I said, "No, not in 25 years I've eaten meat," and I was so angry, and I went to stand very close to him, and he got like seemed like afraid of me or something. I was shouting, I was screaming, and it was not dramatic at all.
I'm sorry, but I don't believe that story. Who's going to be afraid of Tobias? Well, maybe if he is armed, he kind of looks scary.
But I felt good, and that is also the game.
kind of fits some sort of profile, maybe.
And blowing off steam and being very angry and seeing ourselves as the good guys and the other people as the bad guys, that can feel very, very good. And that's why we are tempted to do it, but it's not necessarily the best thing to do for animals.
Well, I'm going to be blunt now, because there's a lot of things said about you and some pretty...
And who's saying that that's the best thing for animals? That is not the vegan stance. The vegan stance is not that we should shout to the most unlikely people to go vegan. Of every social movement starts with honest, intellectually honest people. People who have some sort of sense of justice. And that's what any movement pretends to achieve, to convince the parts of society that can be convinced at first, and then there's a critical mass of people believing not that they should reduce the injustice, but that the injustice is unjustifiable.
Things said about you, so I'm curious to know how you'd respond to them. Some people would say that you're weakening this movement. The animal advocacy movement did say that you are making veganism, the plight of the animals, less urgent, less radical, and ultimately less effective. Do you agree?
Well, no, I don't agree. And first of all, I speak a lot about animals, and wherever it's appropriate, wherever I think it's going to be effective, I speak about the animals, and I emphasize the urgency.
About the animals suffering. That is not veganism.
I've been into this for 25 years, and I know how urgent it is, and it's my life. So if I know that something is not effective or is...
25 fucking wasted years, or very profitable years. 25 very profitable years for a fucking guy in Europe weakening a concept, or trying to weaken a concept because that's not the concept. But I think he has achieved to deceive people into thinking that veganism is something else. That veganism is utilitarianism. It's like, oh, the principle is to reduce suffering no matter how.
Something or is like to the disadvantage of the animals, I would never do it. I do these things because I believe they're good for animals. And what I want to do is basically...
And that's, if that's true, it could be true. If that's true, then say it clearly. I believe in utilitarianism, not in veganism. I believe in utilitarianism. How to create a utilitarian world to reduce suffering. That's the honest title to this bullshit book that this guy released. The honest title is How to Create a Utilitarian World to Reduce Suffering.
Make this whole thing more accessible. People might see that as watering down or devaluing or whatever, but I think the problem is that we have an ideology that we want to seduce people into that is quite demanding.
That is utilitarianism. He wants people to become utilitarians. Like, oh, yeah, we should reduce suffering. Maybe we can shoot animals in the head and then they don't suffer.
For most people, never eating animal products and then maybe also adopting political and ideological beliefs that we want them to accept, that is a tall order. That's the
political and ideological beliefs. What kind of political beliefs? That animal suffering is wrong? That is not the fucking point of veganism.
ask. So you can compare it to like a club, and if the membership price is very high, there will not be very many people joining. So I'm in favor of lowering the membership price a little bit so that we have more people that can join, so that we have a
Lowering the membership price, like telling people to just exploit fewer animals every week. That's lowering the price point of a membership to a club in Belgium. Great analogy. This guy thinks, utilitarians think, that this is a kind of a chess game where, well, maybe if I sacrifice my queen, maybe I can win the game. Social justice causes are not fucking games. And they are not about numbers of reducing. They are about ideas. Getting through society. The idea that animals are here to be exploited should not be normalized or trivialized. Like, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. You can just forget yourself. If you exploit some animals, it's better. That if you exploit more animals, it's not so good.
movement that's not just this 1% of vegans that can participate, but many more people to form to be a bigger weight on government, on industry, and everything.
Mm-hmm. Part of you doing that is the kind of focus on reduction to make it more accessible, as opposed to make it more doable for people to kind of join the animal advocacy world, right?
Yeah, but
animal advocacy. What the fuck is that? That if I reject bullfighting, while I go to the protest against bullfighting on a Sunday morning, and in the afternoon I go to watch the soccer game, the football match, with my friends, and eat some steaks while we watch the game and have a barbecue. That animal advocacy. What the fuck is that? Animal advocacy.
Action is also that, like, if there's many people reducing, this creates a lot of demand and this creates a lot of products, and it's because these products are there, then it becomes easier and easier for everyone to go vegan. And if you today have a lot of, say, plant-based milks to choose from, they are there not because of the 1% vegans, they are there because a much higher percentage of people is drinking plant-based milks now and then for whatever reason.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, a lot of people drinking plant milk. A lot of people drink soy milk, and then they go and have some cookies with milk, with their soy milk. Because it's like, well, maybe this is kind of hard on my tummy. So a lot of people are drinking vegetable milk, and they don't care at all about animal exploitation. And then they go buy their Prada purse with with the leather and feathers and.
Of that, I've seen a lot of times. This is probably the most common critique I've heard from people who disagree with reducing eating animal products. They'll say, would you ever tell a racist or a slave owner to reduce what they're doing? And then why would you tell people to reduce in this case then? How do you respond to that?
Yeah, I think that we are comparing very different things, different in terms of social acceptance. Like, some people say, for instance, you would never have a child abuse-free Monday, like you have a meat-free Monday, because that would say, like, it would like show that this child abuse is allowed on all the other days. And I think it's a very bad comparison, because you are comparing something that 99% of people disapprove of and is illegal, really child abuse or slavery or whatever.
Yeah, I wonder how these 99% of people came to reject that idea. I wonder how. Maybe some people started to reject it altogether and say, well, this has to be abolished. Maybe. Some people at some point in history maybe said, well, this should be rejected and not normalized anymore.
Compare it with something that 95%.
But the analogy, it's illegal. How did it become illegal?
Celebrate, which is eating meat. And if you really think that you are treating these things at the same level, then why are you not in a supermarket slamming the meat out of people's hands as soon as they buy it? Right? You're not.
Yeah. At some point, some people started to believe that dogs shouldn't be hurt. And in societies where that's the belief, if somebody is hurting a dog, violence is accepted, even encouraged.
Acceptance of that is completely different than with slavery. If you see somebody beating somebody else on the street, we will interfere, but not if you see somebody buying meat. So we accept that these things are different. We accept that we have to use different strategies, different communications. We know that
the strategy is not to say, well, then it's permitted every once in a while.
about these things, around these things.
Another hot topic that comes up a lot with you is your stance on, and this is the biggest one, even for me, this was a tough one actually to get my head around. It's your stance on social flexibility.
That I have been saying for years and years that I'm an abolitionist.
Book, and I guess outside of the book again, that sometimes it could be better for a vegan to participate in eating a non-vegan meal in a social setting to avoid reinforcing the idea that veganism is difficult or exclusionary and these types of things. Isn't that just proving what people thought already, that animals are in fact food, the complete opposite of what we're trying to say? Or is it something else? And where's the line between strategy and hypocrisy?
Always gave is like, there's a person and they've cooked a meal and they're not vegan, they cooked a meal for you, especially, and they looked up a recipe, etc. And they bought the ingredients and they made a lasagna, and the lasagna sheets, the pasta dough itself contains eggs. And you're there, you're sitting there, that's the only thing you can eat. They put all this work in it. Are you going to eat it or are you going to refuse it? And I think in those circumstances you do more damage by refusing it than by eating it. There's no animal going to be saved by because you eat or you don't.
So you still think that eggs are a product for you? If somebody went to all this trouble to make a very nice meal of baby, human baby. Well, if you don't think of human babies as a resource, you reject that meal. And that's what vegans think. No, that's not a resource for me. I don't see that as a food for me. I don't see any animal as a source of entertainment or clothing or whatever. But since this guy, it's all about food, well, maybe a little bit of not so bad.
That lasagna, but you are going to have a big impact on that other person who might say like, oh my god, this is...
The big impact is that person is going to say, well, these vegans are full of bullshit. It's such a trivial, and virtue signaling identity. It's some sort of identity to virtue signal, and they don't care. These vegans are just wishy-washy and stupid, and they just want to virtue signal, and they don't even go through with what they're full of bullshit, because they don't even go through with whatever they say. They say that animals are not resources, but if it's too inconvenient, then they are resources, and they don't have any principles. They talk about principles and they don't have any, like you.
Difficult, I could never do this, I'm not going to ever invite this guy again, etc. I mean, possibly, there's also other outcomes that are possible, but the important thing here is that, again, this is a matter of pragmatism. Suppose I asked you, what if you absolutely, definitely knew that this situation, if you refuse the lasagna, would be damaging, would set animals back a little?
What if you had a crystal ball, and the crystal ball says that in the future... Now, well, if you believe that the only way to emancipate animals is for society to reject the use of animals altogether, then you promote veganism. It's not that we have a crystal ball. We believe that that's the only way. After centuries of welfarism, we believe that that's the way to go.
Would you still stick to your principles? My answer to that is my principles are reducing animal suffering. My principle is not...
There you go. That's his principle. Utilitarian, self-proclaimed. If you watch this guy's interviews, praising Peter Singer and saying that because of Peter Singer, he's a utilitarian, then you will understand what is going on here. And it's not that they are promoting veganism. They are utilitarians. Utilitarians are not vegans. their only principle is to reduce suffering. It doesn't matter how. They believe a lot of bullshit ideas, killing animals to reduce suffering. They believe in enclosing, imprisoning animals in the oceans, whales, to reduce suffering. A completely different idea from veganism. Veganism is about the moral obligation of humans as moral agents, not to use other sentient individuals as if they were here for them, as if they belonged to them. That is it. It's a simple idea that should be universal, that should be easy for people to understand, that should be easy for people to say, well, okay, yeah, that's unfair. Yeah, that's incorrect. That's not a just act or a just way of perceiving other sentient individuals.
With the outcome that I see, which is helping animals, and if this thing helps animals...
Yeah, Peter Singer is consistent with his outcome, and that's why he endorses bestiality. Given the fact that the animal doesn't suffer. Is that veganism? No, not at all. It's the opposite of veganism. Peter Singer believes that, well, if you cheat on somebody and that person doesn't find out, what is the problem? Pleasure is being maximized and suffering is not being caused.
Also, in my case, only goes so far. In case there would be meat in that lasagna, I wouldn't do it. So it's also a matter of like, yeah.
That sounds dogmatic. If it's eggs, I will do it. If it's meat, I won't do it. That sounds dogmatic. Why? Why is meat worse than eggs, or what? What is the fucking problem with meat that is not in eggs? Dogmatic, pragmatic, until they tell me that it's meat.
Disgust and what you're used to, and I'm not saying...
It's disgusting. Well, eggs are disgusting. So what?